Right on time, Will Gunter, 107
Yeah,
at the game. I'm just diving into a little Shane Beamer analysis after watching his stay in front of the media today. You can join Will on the all-new early game, again, 107.5 the game. Will, how's it going?
it's going good, man. Of course, it's incredibly hot here. I think the heat index is like 108. So good luck to anybody else out there that's braving the weather here in the South. But it's a good time. But it's fun. Glad that we finally got some football going today.
So yeah, it's year 4. So Shane Beamer needs to get things cranked up here, needs to show something, especially since it started well. And I was just starting to explain to everyone how that first year looked. Um, and considering the depleted roster, he did a great job. And then they take off in year 2 and it's better. And then last year, sure, you can look at injuries and other things, but with a quarterback who did more than anybody you would think of will be able to do today on this roster, only 5 wins. So your thoughts about Shane Beamer and what he had to say today?
Well, number one, I think in terms of just talking about Shane Beamer, it is an important year. I don't think he's on the hot seat. I think anybody that's taken it that far is being a little overreactive and dramatic. But there is no doubt that South Carolina has to get back to a bowl game, whether that's 6 wins and winning the bowl game to give himself a above 500 year, or getting to 7 wins. I think 7 is when it's all said and done. You've got to reach 7. So again, maybe that's 7-6 or 7-5, and then maybe go win the bowl game and get to 8. But last year obviously was a massive disappointment. There's no other way around that. They blew a game, absolutely blew a game to Florida that they should have won, that would have made them bowl eligible. Give up a 4th and 17 there, and actually had the ball thrown behind the line of scrimmage and should have made the tackle, but didn't manage to do that. And then the Clemson game, really, it was there. It was a great opportunity for them to pick up a second victory in a row over Clemson and really establish some dominance. And they opened that game by throwing a backwards pass that is dropped, that Clemson picks up and runs in for a touchdown and completely takes all the air out of the stadium. So you are right. This is an important year, but again, it's not one. I don't think. I don't think if he were to go 5-7 or 4-8, I don't think that would get him fired. I think he's got another year that he will get to have. But I do think you have to look at the results of the games. You can't go 4-8, basically lose 8 conference games, or lose 7 conference games and 1 to Clemson, and in those games get blown out. It might be a little bit different if you lose 6 of those by, say, a touchdown and you look competitive, because there are some pieces on the roster moving forward that are very nice. And then as far as today, I quite frankly have no idea what he said. The opening statement was 17 minutes. I think he repeated himself twice. He took questions. I liked what he did, but he was up there, I think, a full 32 minutes, and I'm not sure what we learned, if anything, from Shane Beamer today.
It was funny, Will, because in searching for various clips online, I clicked on last year's news conference and listened to it for about 30 seconds before I determined, okay, this is last year. But he said, my kids were all over me because I was so long-winded last year. I'm going to keep it down because I got just nailed for being up here forever. So I'm going to keep it tight. I'm
He
like,
didn't do it. He made mention of that in the press conference. He actually said that he I think he won the award for longest opening statement last year, and said he's going to try and keep it a little bit shorter, and then promptly went about another 7 minutes to get to that 17-minute mark. And again, I will, in all seriousness, I do like how he handled it, because I think this is a team, and I've said this from January. South Carolina has been very good in the past with their creative team, putting out Twitter videos and promoting the program and showing the chemistry that the program has, and how those guys are coached. When you go 5-7, fan base doesn't want to see that. They don't want to see you having a really good time at your facility. And I've also said that I don't think they need to brag on anybody. They need to let these guys go out and kind of earn their reputation through games, and kind of the same thing with the team. So they've done a good job, I think, this offseason of kind of staying quiet, of not putting out all those videos. They would have one of them. Again, I think they played hide and seek in the facility 2 years ago. They put out one that was kind of the Full House video. They put out one that was kind of like The Office. Was it 2 years ago in Atlanta? He had the one where he put the shades on, danced around before he came. I really applaud them because I feel like they've read the room, if you will. They understand, hey, we kind of need to back this down and win football games. And then I think also today he did a good job of not trying to oversell Lenoris Sellers. He did a good job of not trying to oversell his defense, which actually should be better. He did talk about them adding depth there, but he didn't try to oversell us on a player, on a position grouping, of anything of that nature, which I think is a really good thing. I think that's what they have to do. Now we're going to get him um, locally next Thursday. I think the 25th is what it is. They do his media golf outing, and so we'll hear from him again then. But I do commend him. He was long winded. That's why I say I don't know what we learned because he somehow got 30 minutes in there, but it was the way it should have been. He didn't need to overhype this team and kind of build up anticipation. You just got to go out there and let them play starting August 31st.
Well, you brought up Sellers. So they go from a much different quarterback situation last year, established starter, veteran, pocket passer, guy who's got an NFL future, to an athlete. And Shane actually mentioned, hey, we've got 4 athletes at quarterback. It's just a much different situation. And it's good to have athletes at quarterback. So is this Sellers and that's it? Or are they still determining what they're going to do and he still has to fight for this job?
Yeah, privately, it's going to be Sellers, and that's the direction they're going. Publicly, I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more that it's an open competition. He did name Lenoris Sellers the starter at one of the club meetings that they go to, kind of in May. But it's pretty well known that it's going to be Lenoris Sellers, the guy for the first few games, and how does he perform, and really kind of go out and make things happen. I mean, this is a young man that, again, he in talking with people that I still talk with in recruiting, he got an injury his junior year, didn't get to play, came back his senior year, had incredible stats. I think it was over 50 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, led his team to a state championship, didn't go to any of the camps. A couple of people with 24/7 Sports that I still deal with think that if he'd have been seen, he could have ended up being a 5-star quarterback. And then, as well as that, the couple plays we have seen him play last year, he made. I granted it was against Furman and Vanderbilt, so we don't want to get too carried away. But he did make some really, really good plays in those 2 ball games that have caught people's attention. It's going to be exciting to see him. I do think having a guy who can run, having a guy who can get out there and run around is going to make a massive difference, as opposed to Spencer Rattler, who could beat you with his arm, but wasn't necessarily going to beat you with his legs.
Is this team going to be stout enough up front on both sides of the ball to compete? And obviously, we need to see it, and you can't necessarily answer that question. But do you get strong indicators that they're better than what they were last year?
Yeah, there's 2 parts. There's 2 parts to that question, and I'll start with yes. And I actually think they've recruited really well along the lines of scrimmage. You look at it, they had Tree Babalade, who was a big time 4-star recruit 2 years ago. Trovon Ball started a lot last year, was a 4-star recruit. The best offensive lineman, Marquis Anderson, got injured and didn't get to play very much last year. That was 3 4-stars they brought in. Then this past year, they brought in a 5-star tackle in Josiah Thompson, who was an All American, was is really well talked about and known about. But with all that being said, the biggest concern is not the talent. I think the biggest concern is the strength and conditioning program. You look at the last 2 years. I think South Carolina's been okay on the offensive line. However, they haven't been able to go out and push around Eastern Illinois and Georgia State in openers. Last year, they gave up 7 sacks in the first half. They haven't been strong enough. It's been to me, it's not a talent issue, it's a strength and conditioning issue. And right now, there you go into the SEC, you got to spend your off season really getting bulked up, getting strong, physically strong to handle these SEC defensive tackles and defensive linemen. And as I had one person down there that interacts with the team said they all look great. They can all go to the beach and pick up women, and it's a fantastic, great looking group of offense and defensive linemen. But that doesn't mean they're strong enough to handle defensive linemen in the SEC, and that's what has got to be fixed. That's what I'm interested to see early on in the season, because you look at those first 3 games with Old Dominion, then you get a physical Kentucky team. LSU's physically imposing, and they're going to come in big, bad, and strong. South Carolina's got to be stronger in it, and so that's what I'm interested to see with the strength and conditioning program.
Will Gunter hosted the early game on 107.5 The Game there in Columbia, South Carolina. So whether it's the other coaches and players that hit the podium today from Ole Miss, Vandy, and LSU, or It's been a while since we talked to you, Will. Anything in the off season around this league that piques your interest that you think is intriguing?
Well, I think the continued discussion of the 9-game conference schedule, for us, for South Carolina fans, since Clemson is a rival and they're not in conference. If you went to the 9 games, now you would look at South Carolina essentially having a 10-game schedule. And what do you do with those other 2 games? Do you schedule cupcakes to try and pick up more victories to get yourself an opportunity to be in a college football playoff or even a bowl? I think that's really, really interesting, especially for us, because again, I love the setup right now of the 8 games. South Carolina typically plays another good opponent. This year they actually do not, but they typically play another really good opponent, such as next year will be Virginia Tech. I think they've got North Carolina State lined up in more years to come. Miami is lined up in a couple years. And with all that being said, what I think that's really, I do think that's where it's going. I think 9 games is where it's going. It's what I expect. But it's going to be really interesting. And then as far as that, it's just continuing to watch Oklahoma and Texas come into this league, and I'm really fascinated to see how Oklahoma in particular handles it, given that they lost Dylan Gabriel, who transferred to Oregon. They lost a bunch of offensive linemen. I know Brent Venables has been here, but I'm really intrigued to see if Oklahoma can step into this league and be the powerhouse that they've been over the last 30 years.
Will, what's going on mornings there at the game there, 107.5?
Yeah, we're now in Florence, Florence, South Carolina. We're in Myrtle Beach. We're hoping to enter a new market in the next 45 days, I guess, and so excited about that. But other than that, we are right now rolling right along. Obviously, we'll spend a lot of tomorrow morning discussing what we think we heard. We actually did a coach's bingo card because, as I've said, this is the most boring event that we have to talk about because coaches have become so uptight about saying something. We laughed this morning a good bit last year at this event. Tonka Hemingway, the defensive lineman, got a very innocent question. Hey, what are some of the toughest venues you've been to in the SEC? Well, he leaves out Georgia. I mean, he didn't mean to, just left him out. He'd only been there once. So South Carolina went back to Georgia this year, and Kirby Smart spent the entire pregame week leading up to it saying, "Oh, this guy doesn't think our environment's difficult. Fans need to show up." So it's one of those things you get the SEC media day and you don't say anything. So we had a coach's bingo card today to see what cliches they would hit, and I think Shane did a good job of hitting just about every one of them.
Yeah, it's a bit robotic, but the SEC, it just seems to get bigger and better every year, or bigger every year for sure, in terms of the scope and the magnitude and the media coverage and the whole deal. Will, we appreciate you stopping by, breaking things down for us.
Always glad to do it, man. Y'all take care.